Hey y'all, welcome to I Got a Story to Tell. I'm your host, Niambi Kiesha, holistic wellness practitioner, hoodoo spiritist, and Bronx native. And during our time together, I will share some of my musings on all things life, spirit, plants, and parenting. So get comfortable and let's dive right in. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the I Got a Story to Tell podcast. I'm your host, Niambi Kiesha, and I am excited to be back. Last week, I took a little break. I went on vacation with my boys, which was amazing. And so I'm ready to get back to it and just come and talk to you guys about so much that is going on. So this week, we're going to talk about all things vacation, when you need to take a break, what that looks like, the importance of it. We're also going to talk about some things that are going on in the cosmos, Mercury retrograde. We had a new moon in Leo. We started Leo season. We're about to come up on the 888 Lionsgate portal. So we just have a whole lot to get into. So let's get started. So, like I said, I took a vacation. I took a break. So there was no new episode last week. And I went on vacation. We went on a family cruise. My middle son turned 18 last September, and he graduated from high school this May, and he will be headed off to college. So this was family vacation, birthday, graduation gift. But the amazing thing that happened was my intention was to book a trip for the three of us, me and my two younger sons. And I booked us a cruise, and we were going to go on the cruise in September. But their godmother shared with me that her and her family were going on a cruise for her dad's birthday. So I said, you know what? Bet. Let me switch up our plans. And this way, I'll have some adults to be with, and they'll have some young people to be with because her nieces and nephews, and her daughter, and her sister, and everyone was going. So it was a humongous group of us, and it was a really, really good time. My boys and I left North Carolina, where we are. We flew up to New York. We stayed in New York overnight, and then we took the cruise. We were gone for 5 days. We came back into New York, and we flew back home. And just the entire experience. This is the first, I would say, first real full on vacation that we've taken probably since about 2017. Now, we do trips. We usually do road trips. I'm a road tripper. I love road trips, and I realize the reason why I love road trips is because they give me flexibility in my timing. And as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that my relationship with time has shifted. My friends laugh at me when I say that. And my best friend says that that's my way of saying that I'm always late. But I do think that it's a little bit more than that. I think that I realize that everything isn't urgent, right? And that time is a construct. And don't get me wrong, if I have somebody waiting for me someplace, then I will be where I need to be with where those individuals are. But the idea of always being up against the clock, rushing, moving fast, not being able to remember things, forgetting things, I would say maybe in the past 6 to 7 years, I've tapped out of that. And I've decided that when it's in my power, I will build in cushions, I will build in timing. That's why we flew in the night before. That's why when they asked me what time did I want to check in on the boat, I selected the latest time. So I want to give myself the time that I need and be truthful with myself about what it takes for me to prepare, to move through things. When I think about this, anytime I'm talking about something, so many things are going on in my mind. And the reality is, that's exactly what it is. There are so many things going on in my mind that it is wise for me to build in time, for me to move at a pace that's comfortable for me to be able to cross all my T's and dot all my I's in a way that will allow me to have peace when I get where I'm going, right? The rushing would result in me worrying about, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I do this? And not really being able to enjoy where I'm going once I get there. So, all of that to say, we took our time, we moved slowly, and it was an amazing journey for me to go on with my two youngest sons. And they have just grown so much since the last time that we've gone on a vacation that it was interesting to see how independent they were. And the reason why that was an important realization in our last episode, well, maybe 2 episodes ago, I talked about parenting and I talked about the dynamic between us as parents and our children. What is our role truly as parents? And how do we allow ourselves to evolve? And sometimes one of the more difficult spaces that parents find themselves in is when you come up on these seasons where your children are evolving, where the way that they need you is shifting. And for some parents, it could feel like what's being said is that your children no longer need you. But as we know, we all have the choice about how we view things, how we frame things, how we structure things, right? And so, what I'm leaning into is that my children will always need me in some capacity, the same way I've always needed my parents in some capacity. Even in the passing of my mother, I'm still in need of her, and the capacity is now just that I'm in the physical and she's in the non physical. But understanding that the way in which our children will need us will shift is important. And if we can do that, we can find peace. We can find a way to let go a little bit, still keeping whatever it is that we need intact, whatever accountability that it is that we need. When we were on the cruise ship, both of my boys were with two separate groups of friends. They were out and about on their way. Every once in a while, they stopped in and checked in with me while I was in the room. And I had to lean into, this is perfectly fine. They are old enough, they are independent. And how can I use this time, use this experience to my benefit? And I absolutely did. I got rest. I was able to relax. I went to eat when I wanted to. I did the things that I wanted to do. And I was able to have a level of calm in the acceptance of the idea that my children didn't need me in the same way, right? That these two, the last trip we took in 2017, it was also a cruise. These two were much younger, and their older brother and my husband at the time, we all went on this trip together. So everybody's need for me at that time was very different. Um, and so I just offer that welcoming new seasons, welcoming the transitions, and finding ways to work through the tension and the discomfort of the change, right? Which brings me to, I said I was going to talk about a number of things that are going on in the cosmos, and we're in a Mercury retrograde. And Mercury retrograde gets a bad rap sometimes. It's like, oh Lord, the world is falling apart, and it's all because of Mercury retrograde. But when I think about Mercury retrograde, Mercury is the planet of communication. And communication covers so many things. It not only covers what we say or what comes out of our mouths, but it also covers how we listen, how we hear. It also covers how we write, how we send messaging, emailing. My communication style is a not a running joke, but it's been a joke pretty recently because for the longest, I would not use Chat GPT. I just didn't use it. I didn't feel like I needed to. And I was talking to a good girlfriend of mine, and we had maybe a few different conversations where something came up about me needing to like take some language or take some wording and put it in a message. And she said, "Do you use Chat GPT?" And I was like, I don't use Chat GPT. But now I'm a proponent of it. And I'm a proponent of it even if I don't take what they give me and use that to send it off. I'm a proponent of being able to openly, like just a dump of what's in my mind without having to think through how to put it together, how to make it perfect, how to put, what is the punctuation. I just dump it, and Chat GPT gives me feedback. And what I like about Chat GPT is then I can give feedback. So I can say, well, no, that's not really the tone that I wanted. Or, yeah, let's go a little bit softer. Or, no, let's go a little bit harder. Or, no, you mixed that part up. That's not really what I meant, but this is what I meant. And it helps me refine one form of my communication. So, again, when we're looking at Mercury retrograde, the way that we communicate is shifting. The world in which we are and the way in which we communicating via text, communicating via email, communicating via voice messages. I'm a lover of voice messages because I want you to hear my voice. I want you to hear my tone. I want you to hear my inflection, right? But with Mercury in retrograde, it's given us an opportunity to reassess, reflect, reconnect, renew. When I think about that retrograde, I think about all the reeve that we can do. It is an opportunity to slow down before we speed back up. And at this time of year, we are at the midpoint of the year. We have just passed the 6 month point of the year, and we're about to move forward to the second half of the year, which is going to be around summer coming to an end. Autumn will begin, which is our season of harvesting and preparing in preparation for the cold of winter, right? When we'll go inward. So, this is the perfect opportunity to look back in a number of different areas. And the look back, what I offer is use what's going on in your life as the indicator for the look back. So for me, I know I'm in a season where my look back is around family. My look back or my retrograde, my reflection is around my relationship with my children, is around what they need from me, is around how I navigate as we are moving through these transitions. My oldest son is 25 and he's out and on his own. My middle son is 18 and he's about to be on his way to college. And the youngest is 12. He's going into seventh grade and he's very independent and he very much so wants his space and wants his autonomy. And so this is an indicator. This is an indicator for me of what my life and my role will be with each of them in the next 4 to 5 years, right? So in what did I say? He's 12. In 5 years, my youngest will be 18, right? So I have been mom at a high level for the past 25 years of my life because even though my oldest is 25, the younger ones were obviously younger. So I have been mom and that version of mom and that need of mom at a high, very hands on level for a large majority of my life. And that is now changing. And so I have the opportunity to reflect. The other thing that I mentioned is Leo season just started and we had a new moon in Leo. So I've shared about your big three, which is your sun, moon, and your rising sign. So most of us know our sun sign. We know the zodiac sign in which we were born. So my sun sign is Taurus. But your rising sign is really who you are at your core, how you show up in the world, what your mark will be, right? And I'm a Leo rising. And so, in understanding what's going on in the cosmos, I am aware that right now, in this Mercury retrograde, I am being called to reflect on my relationships with my children, family, home, right? What does home mean? What does home look like? Has my definition of home shifted and changed? I have a post on Instagram. It was maybe two, no, it's actually last year. I spoke at a Juneteenth festival here called Durag Fest. And I was on a panel, and the young lady that I was on a panel with was an interior designer. And when they coupled us together, like at first glance, I'm thinking, well, I don't know like what the connection is because my proposal was around spirituality, wellness, all of those things that I talk about, but it aligned perfectly because her approach to interior design was around the fact that your home is a reflection of who you are. Your home is a reflection of what's going on inside. And so when she worked with her clients, she worked with them to be able to draw that out. And so my contribution to the conversation was around what does figuring out what your internal home looks like so that when you go to work with someone, an interior designer, to design your external environment, they can match up and you're not living in some false tension, right? But home does start internally. Home starts with who we identify ourselves as. Home starts with what we want to experience when we walk through those doors. If we have blockages, if we have um, unresolved things that don't allow us to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel stable, that will be reflected in our home, right? I had a conversation with a girlfriend that talked to me about the idea that she realized she never really settled into her apartment and she's been there probably 4 or 5 years, but she hasn't really invested in putting artwork up, or because internally she has this struggle with stability from her childhood, from growing up. How long will I be here? Will this get snatched from up under me? And we have to realize that it's all tied together. How we move through life, how we move through the world, what our external environments look like are directly tied to what's going on internally, what experiences we've had, what our core memories are, right? And when we have these moments in the cosmos where the energy supports us doing that work, those are the best times. So we can do the work at any time. But what I love about astrology is it lets us know when the tide is moving in our favor for certain things. So there are certain times, there are certain moments, certain transits, certain conjunctions where certain things are lined up together, and it is the best time to do a certain thing, a best time to take a certain action, the best time to dig into this area of life or that area of life, because life is very complex, right? And there's always multiple things going on at the same time. I used the example, and I actually heard this a few different places, but it resonated the most with me with Abraham Hicks and the law of attraction when we talk about how do you tune your frequency. We hear a lot of people talking about high vibrational, but what does that really mean? And so if you think about a radio station, if there is Power 98 and 107.5 and 101.3, and Ricky Smiley is on one station and Steve Harvey is on one station and DL Hughley is on one station, just because your radio is tuned to Steve Harvey, it doesn't mean that D.L. Hughley is not still broadcasting, right? So if what Steve Harvey is talking about is not what you want to hear, if the music that Steve Harvey is playing or on that station is not music that you want to listen to or music that you find enjoyable, if the commercials on that station are, offensive to you, know that there is another station. You just have to turn your dial. And sometimes you have to like flip through it. I know I'm aging myself because most radios now, like in cars, are either you push the button or it's streaming or whatever. But back in the day, you actually had a dial and you turned it and you could hear it when you were turning it, like until you got to the point where it was back in a frequency and then you could hear that person's voice clear. And if that wasn't the station that you wanted, then you turned it some more. And maybe some days you wanted to be on D.L. Hughley's station, and some days you wanted to be on Ricky Smiley's, and some days you needed to be on a gospel station, and some days you needed to be on NPR, the news station. And that's what I'm saying about when we are dealing or looking at astrology, there are times when you might need to hone in on your emotional experience. There are times when you may need to hone in on what's going on with your home life, your family life. There are times when you may need to hone in on your finances, your physical environment, getting your affairs in order. What does your bank account look like? Are you paying your bills on time? Those things. There are times where you hone in on your dreams and your fantasy and you stay out in the cosmos. And so, again, bringing it all back, Mercury goes retrograde a couple of times a year. It's not once a year, but it's understanding that whenever it's going retrograde in a certain area. And so if this is something that resonates with you or you want to dig deeper, I recommend downloading an astrology app. I talk about the Chani app often because I feel like it's easy to use, it's easy to understand, and you get to look at the zodiac is a wheel. So imagine a pizza pie that's cut into 12 slices. That is each sign. And then there are 12 houses. And the houses govern the energy of that slice of the pie. So there's a house for career, there's a house for relationship, there's a house for home, family, and friendships, right? And so it takes some time, but if you are interested in being able to understand where these certain things are happening in your chart and how they impact you, I recommend downloading um, an astrology app. There's more than just the Chani app, there's multiple ones out there. Chani is just the one that I use and that I find the easiest to understand and process. So again, I'm walking through this Mercury retrograde. We started Leo season, so that's where I was going, saying that I am a Leo rising. So this season, this August stretch of time, end of July through August, is always the season that is about how do I show up in the world? Am I standing in the fullness of whatever is going on in that season of my life? And again, for me, the connections are my home life, my definition, my day to day of how I will mother, right? Also, because mothering has taken up a large majority of my time. So, with that shifting, what does my time look like? What do I fill my time with now? Do I know? So many of us that are parents or are really deeply involved in anything may not know what we want to do with our own time when that thing comes to an end. And that is something that I am a strong proponent for. Knowing who you are as an individual, as a person, separate and apart from any labels that you've placed on yourself, the world has placed on you. And I'm not saying labels like in a negative way, but they are labels. And sometimes those labels need to become our identity. But what do we do when our identity is shifting? What do we do when it's time for a new version to emerge? And if we don't have a plan and we don't let that go, it usually doesn't end well. That's how you have situations where the children don't feel like you're giving them their freedom or their autonomy, or the parents feel overwhelmed and sad and feel like the children are taking them for granted. And it can just turn into a whole bunch of things. But as the parent, we can prepare for this. As the parent, we can acknowledge that we had a job to do for a season. It looked different each time, right? The way that I parent my 18-year-old is different from how I parented him when he was a newborn, when he was 5, when he was 10. So why would that not change at 18, right? And so knowing and preparing for these shifts and these transitions can help them go a lot smoother. So, coming back, Leo season, and we have the Leo new moon. And with new moons are about setting intentions. So, tying this all together, we're going through a Mercury retrograde where I'm looking at what does home mean for me? What is my relationship with my children? What is my relationship with parenting, with being a mom? And now that I'm navigating all of this in the season of my rising sign, right? Which means all of this is about to shift. And what does it mean for my public persona? What does it mean for my career? What does it mean for what risk I can take? What does it mean for what changes I can make? What does it mean for what challenges I can confront? And then we have a new moon in Leo, which is the opportunity for me to reflect and answer all of those questions. And based on the answer of those questions, plant some seeds. Plant some seeds and write down, this is where I would like to go. This is what I envision for myself. This is the path that I intend to take. This is how I'll mother in this new season. This is how I'll Niambi in this new season. This is how I'll partner in this new season. And I get to write that down and I get to plant those seeds. So that is what I did from when Mercury retrograde started, going on this cruise, having this wonderful experience with my children, but also having a good bit of autonomy and time for myself, and then coming back to this Leo season and this new moon and setting some of those intentions. The other thing that I came back to was the passing of Malcolm Jamal Warner, um, which was a very unexpected, jarring news to come home to. I think actually maybe we found out while we were still on the cruise, or maybe it was like our last day coming back. And as with everyone, it automatically took me to a place of reflection, a place of looking back on my childhood. I do want to be respectful, right? That Malcolm Jamal Warner was a human being with a family, with a life, that Theo was a character, but acknowledging that that character, similar to when all of the Wahala happened with Bill Cosby, if you grew up in um, that time frame, then you know what the Cosby Show meant to black folks, right? And what the representation level was of that show when it came to family, professionalism, and just the whole host. When you look back on that show, all of the different things that they raised up, the episode when Bill Cosby and Malcolm Jamal Warner, when Theo wanted to move out and he gave him the money, and everybody in the house was playing the different roles as the landlord. And I'm thinking about that. That was hilarious. But you know, the life lessons, there were so many life lessons. There were so many life lessons played out on that show. The magnitude of the value and the impact of that show is just beyond words when you really sit back and think about all of the episodes, the lessons around how to parent. I'm thinking about when Vanessa went to Baltimore to see the ratchet, and Claire is tearing into her, but Vanessa also had to navigate, did she make good decisions, and somebody stole their tickets, and it was just so much, so many life lessons. But all of that to say, I found out the news about Malcolm Jamal Warner passing, and that then, was just this reminder of how fragile life is, right? How the unexpected happens every day, that he was on vacation, enjoying life, that no one that was there with him thought that would be the last time that they would all be together. No one that was there on vacation while he was swimming with his young child thought, this will be the last time I'm in the ocean with my dad. This will be the last time I get to watch my husband and my daughter in the ocean. This will be the last. No one thought this would be the last time. And so it just brought me back to this idea of the importance of present moment, right? The importance of, and not in a minimizing, like, oh, you only have one life to live. And I'm not saying that, I just sometimes don't like cliches, but just saying that this is where our understanding of divinity and divine timing, and the fact that none of us know. None of us know when, none of us know how. We all may assume that we think we would prefer it this way. You hear people having the conversations all the time. Would you rather be ill and have time to say goodbye, or would you rather, pass unexpectedly? None of us know. None of us know. All we know is that we all will make the transition from this physical back to the non physical. And what I believe from my experience with death, and grief, is that it is even that transition, when, how, where, is divinely timed and divinely orchestrated. And so, if we can have a level of acceptance, a level of detachment from what we think it should look like, how long we think somebody should be here, what we think the end should look like, and practice acceptance in all things, I believe that's the only way to truly navigate the hardship, the confusion of unexpected life events, death, but also other things, right? We Death is like the big one, or we make it the big one, but we have other unexpected things that take place in our life. When we lose a job, when a relationship fails, when we have to move, when someone has a fire and loses everything in their home, right? There are a number of unexpected circumstances. Someone is injured, ends up paralyzed. But the trying to get clarity and understanding from a human lens is what I believe could potentially send you off the edge. When I think back to losing my mother, there was an aspect of release that I had to do. I had to. Otherwise, I would have been pissed, angry, bitter, because there was no justification for the life that my mother lived for the contributions that she made to this world, to the education system, to my family, to my friends, I'm sure to my brother's friends, to her friends. The kindness and generosity in which she moved through this world, according to my human, guidelines. There's no justification for why my mother's life would be cut short. And I do air quotes because cut short is even me deciding that it should have continued on. But the release, the detachment, allows me to say, what I'm certain is she heard, job well done. What I'm certain is that she lived in a way that whatever is waiting for her in her transition back to the non physical is one of peace and joy, welcoming energy. There's no way in the world, for the very reasons that I shared, that it doesn't make sense that she's not here, are the very reasons that I know her spirit is at peace and has been welcomed, embraced, held, loved by those other spirits in the non physical. And so when we walk through life, it's finding this balance of how do we reflect on where we've been, going back to what I shared about parenting. How do we look forward in making decisions about what we want our life to be? How do we prepare for life ahead while still understanding and maintaining a level of detachment in present moment, in knowing that that preparation for life ahead is not guaranteed? And that's the duality of life. That is the all of the frequencies playing on the radio at the same time, right? That is love and grief coexisting. That is the totality of this human experience, right? Joy and pain, sunshine and rain, peanut butter and jelly, right? Ham, no burger, right? But that's the truth of it. And so it's what tools, what practices, what ways can you live that can allow you to internalize that, process through it, wake up with a level of joy, excitement, gratitude, move with a level of integrity, pride, confidence, and exist in a present moment with a peaceful detachment from the outcome. That's my offer for this week. That's how I see life summed up. We have the opportunity to do some things while we're here. We have the opportunity to mold and move and manifest and think about and dream and explore what we would like next. And ultimately, we find a peace in knowing that this is just a blip on our radar. This human experience, we came from the non physical through our parents' womb into the physical. We will transition out. This is just a blip. How do we make the most of that blip? And then how do we not get so tied up and tangled up in attachment to what should be? Because the excitement is in the fact that if we stay attached to what should be, then we can only be attached to our level of understanding. But detachment also allows us to have experiences that we could not fathom, could not dream of, could not imagine. So when I talk about manifesting things in that new moon, there are things that I wrote down and put in my God box that I have never experienced, and neither has anyone in my family. And I'm beyond thrilled and excited to see it come to pass. And I'm also okay with the idea that if it doesn't come to pass for me, should my time in this physical come to an end before it comes to pass, it will come to pass for my children, for my grandchildren, for my cousins, for my nieces, for my god sisters, because I've poured out, for my godchildren, because I've poured out. I've made the idea or the notion, I've said it out of my mouth, I've put it into the atmosphere. It is a seed that's not only planted in a new moon for me, it is a seed that I have planted in the consciousness of anyone that's in my life. It is a seed that is being planted in the consciousness of anyone that hears this podcast episode. So these seeds will be flourishing whether I'm here physically or not. And that brings me immense joy. So, as we continue on, like I said, we are in the 888 Lionsgate portal, which is a stretch of time that is magnificent for manifestation under the energy of the lion, the pride, the confidence, the regal royalty of the lion. This is the energy. And if you are interested in learning more, you can Google 888 Lionsgate Portal and get an understanding of what that is. It started July 26th. It peaks on August 8th. But there's a lot going on right now in the cosmos that supports an energy of reflecting on where you were so that you can make some decisions about where you want to go. Shine bright like a diamond. Show up in the fullness and totality of who you are, what you desire, what you know you're capable of. Ease into transition. Build a flexible relationship with change, and then go forth and experience joy. That's all we're here to do. Okay? All right. So, y'all have an amazing rest of the week, and we will be back next week. All right. Take care.